Coming up this week on the Digital Lifestyle Show 851, Gary's back, Richard's here, and we've got lots to talk about. We've got new builds of Windows 11 to talk about, and the updates for the Microsoft built-in Windows apps that come with Windows 11. And we'll talk about a bit of the UI that's coming with that. Talk about the Windows 11 22H2 update. Richard was talking about his museums we went to. We've got some EV chat, home server, media center kind of talk as well. So let's get straight to the show. Gary, Richard, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And Gary's back. Although
yeah.
You're in a charging filling station somewhere.
Well, it's a charging station. I think this one's in even Holland or Belgium, but
it's a filling station. Goodness
me.
Yes.
It is a electricity filling station.
There are some pumps there behind you, aren't there? So yes.
Well, I think those ones are all electricity ones.
No, I can see on the distance. There it is. There's a,
yeah. Oh, that one, yeah, right at the back there. I think that might be a hydrogen one, actually. But yeah, this is fairly advanced charging state, but it's a good example of a well-designed charging hub. Nice big spaces and fairly accessible and all that sort of good stuff.
And hopefully all the terminals working as well.
Yep, and all terminals working as well. Because these are Ken power chargers, which are very reliable unless they're vandalised, which is another story. But yeah, it actually leads on to an interview we've got. I'm not sure, is it going to plug in tonight?
Yes, yeah. We'll have the interview at the end of the show.
So I'm going to be talking to Kate Tyrell about EV ChargeSafe, which is all about making chargers safer for people to charge out late at night and making sure the locations are safe, but also accessible for both people with disabilities and also people perhaps with young families who might need to be getting in and out of the cars without to bang into bollards, which is an issue on a lot of chargers. So yeah, really interesting to chat with Kate coming up later.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. We've got some Windows Insider news tonight. We've got a bit of Surface Duo news, some app news, and Richard, first of all, I want to start. How did you get on with your various geeky events last week?
Oh, I had a brilliant time here. So yes, so this last week I went to Loughborough for the TI99 user group AGM, and it was great. Yeah, although everyone looks so much older and greyer than I remember them being 30 years ago, which meant
it's strange that, yeah,
older and greyer than I was. So anyway, yes, it was great. Yeah, there was some kit on show, some stuff on the Simmerville, and but I discovered while there, just down the road from there, because I planned to go to the Leicester Space Centre anyway. There is another retro computing museum just down the road in Leicester. It's brilliant.
Now, I think that's the one. Oh, I forgot the name of the place now. When I went to a show about maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and they came and brought their kit to it. And I think they were based in Leicester.
It might have been, in that case, it could be the same place. It's the Retro Computer Museum, and it's it's gloriously amateurish. Actually, it kind of feels like this is some, this is a proper collection here. It's got all the boxes on the shelves and things, and the games on the walls and things. And they roll out the various machines. And actually, in fact, I think on it's retrocomputermuseum.co.uk is the website. Even on the site, what you see on the site is not what's in there. I guess they must have rotated things around. There's also a room full of old retro arcade machines as well. You can play on. So I had to go and hang on the Sega game from the 80s, which I could say I was rubbish at. But yeah, I was generally impressed. It's only open, I think, 2 days a week. It's open on Saturdays and Sundays, I think, and even then it's like 10 till 3:30. And there's a little mini shop there. I think it costs about £7 to get in, £7.50 I think to get in. And then it's just free reign of all the machines that are there turned on. There's consoles. I had to go on the Atari 2600. There's loads of machines there all up and running. There was an Oric, I think, they're running as well, which I'd not used for many years.
Oh, that's like the Spectrum looking one with the white buttons.
That's right. Yep. And there was also it had Acorn Electrons there as well, and obviously the Commodores and things. Didn't see a TI-99, I was sad to say. Never mind, next time. But yeah, tons of stuff there. I had CPC was there. They had the Spectrum Plus, with the big keyboard there. I have to say, highly recommended if you're in the area, because it's just, and the people there are so enthusiastic. There was a person that gave me a guided tour of the place before I got stuck into the equipment. So yeah, I'd recommend a visit if you're in the Leicester area, the Retro Computer Museum, to really indulge your retro nerd.
Sounds fantastic. Like our next team trip.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Not a bad idea. I mean, it's not as what the word I use is professional. Perhaps it's not a strong word to use as say the Centre for Computing History or the National Museum of Computing. But it is a lot of fun because all the stuff is there, and I think they've also got a networked Quake there as well, which is quite fun.
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
Again, another blast of the past. But yes, a whole range of games there. So I entertained myself playing squash on a Binatone orange plastic console from the 70s, and Combat on the Atari 2600 VCS, which is I managed to win that because I put it on a two-player game and played alone, and then I won, which is the only way I've ever won before.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I think I'll include a link in the show notes. So just remind me of that link again.
Yeah, sure. It's the retrocomputermuseum.co.uk. As I say, it's well worth a go if you're into your retro games and your retro machines like sort of Commodores and Amigas and Sinclair machines and Ataris.
Yeah, actually, I do know. It is the one I was thinking of.
Yeah, it's the one. Yeah, I mean, what I found really cool was just all the boxes as well. So they had so many boxes from all the computers, and and I recognise things like the Amiga 500 boxes I can remember, selling from a shop. There's a Batman one, and there's a deluxe paint one there. Oh, crikey! It was like meeting an old friend.
Paint, yeah.
It was like meeting an old friend again. It was wonderful.
Oh yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, so I'll definitely look out for that then. I'll make sure we I'll include a link for that in the show notes. But yeah, they're great fun, those places, because especially that one. I think there's less of sort of the education that the Cambridge type ones, and more of just enthusiasts. It's really enthusiasts that I know Andy that runs the place. They're great enthusiasts of it, and
yes, they are hugely enthusiastic. It's just great to see, and all the gears running, and it is a lot more like I remember it being when I was playing on a machine at home 40 years ago. It's just great, really really fun, and as you say, really fun to sort of have these enthusiasts on hand who clearly are very passionate about all this stuff, but it's just great. I cannot recommend it enough if you're in the area.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So definitely have a look out for that in the future. So that was your geek quota filled for that weekend.
It was great. Yes, and of course I shan't even mention the fact I discovered that Loughborough's got a great steam railway as well. That's a whole different story. So yes, but yes, I had a great time. I had no idea it was there. It wasn't until someone at the TI event said, "Oh, did you know there's a museum?" No, didn't know that at all. And obviously it's huge. It's online. It's got a really good website. And I thought, wow, I have to go here. And so just pitched up unannounced, and in I went. It was great. Really good.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you enjoyed that. So the other things we're going to talk about this week, we finally got a build after having no build for a couple of weeks. We didn't have a build, but we got one last. Actually, no, that we did get one the week before, didn't we? We got on a Saturday or Friday night, and then we got a Thursday build last week. 22616.
Yes.
I think this was another one that with Microsoft gives and they take away. They did fix the show hidden icon bug that was that had with the little triangle thing missing, so you couldn't show your hidden icons. I think that was the main thing. But they have put something in there that I'm sure you really like. Is if you've got Windows 11 Pro and you go through the out-of-box setup, you have to use a Microsoft account unless you set it up for work or school. So if you set it for personal use, you have to use a Microsoft account.
Yeah, well, I guess there's a certain inevitability about that, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
it is a shame, though. Yes, but you're quite right. Yes, you do need the Microsoft accounts do. But then I think to do many things with Windows 11, you have to really have a Microsoft account now, or unless you're running a machine that's controlled by an enterprise. So it's I guess it's just one of those things. It's just we're getting close to the point now where if you really don't want to use a Microsoft account, then you should probably not use Windows.
Yeah, and and I suppose Microsoft will say it's the optimal experience, and there aren't that many operating systems, perhaps aside from Linux, that that you get away with not using an account. You can't use Android very well without a Google account, or you can't use. I don't know whether you can even use an iPhone at all. Can you? An iPad without a without an Apple account?
I don't think so, unless of course it's being controlled by an organisation. I think which they can run things via the mobile device management platform. But otherwise, yeah, if you're a consumer, you're going to have an Apple account. And the same applies if you're a consumer buying a Mac. You're going to probably have an Apple account. So yeah, it's getting harder and harder. But again, as you say, if that sort of thing does worry you or bother you, then I think you need to start considering Linux, which is handy because Linux is getting to be more and more of a usable alternative.
So we're saying this is the year of Linux on the desktop.
Well, it's been there for a while. I mean, I've used the Windows system for Linux lots.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
yeah, that's definitely Linux on the desktop, on the Windows desktop.
Exactly.
The other thing that they mentioned in this in the blog post as well is that the window for these builds is closing soon.
Yes, well, is that the window where you can change from dev channel to beta channel and stuff? Yeah, well, it's been open a long time, isn't it? Actually, it's been open a good month or so now.
Yeah, and my guess is, I said for a while, I think 22H2 is done. I thought it would be October released, but it's looking like the way that they're pulling features out of this release, and we're still on beta and dev synced up. We're pretty close to the final version of this. The watermark's gone, so I think we're pretty much done with that. And soon the dev channel will go off to a higher build value. I was trying to think. I'm sure there was something else. I forgot what it is now. There was something else they yanked out of it.
There's a sound recorder. We can discuss that at
some
point.
Oh no. Yeah. What they've yanked out the build. It was the new way of the overflow icons, or whatever they call it. Where you can organize your on your taskbar where your OneDrive is, and your Teams icons and whatever. They changed that a few builds ago. They've pulled that out of this build as well. So back to how it was on the previous pre 4 or 5 builds ago. So I think they're just going through now and thinking, what's not quite there yet? Yank that out. What's working okay? Leave that in. So I think we're pretty close to the. I think we're pretty close to this being done now, as they're just pulling out those things.
Because I mean, pretty much all they've done really is kind of plug the new apps and things, haven't they?
Yeah. So I think some of the tablet gestures got taken out. Some of them still in there, but the nice thing I liked was the collapsing taskbar. That's gone.
But I think obviously you've forgotten about today's update. That there was an update today.
Oh, is there a servicing pipeline?
Yes, there was a servicing pipeline update today.
How did I miss that? I love a good servicing pipeline.
Exactly, it happened today. They're basically testing out their servicing pipeline for builds and dev and beta channels once again. So hurrah!
I'm gutted I missed that now.
Oh, there we go.
I usually check them every day.
One's turned up today.
I'm going to go get those pictures. Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah. There's my Jeff Chalmers machine. Oh, I love a good servicing pipeline.
It's the best tested pipeline in the world.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Maybe they've stuck some stuff in there to stop the leaked of Outlook build from working.
Oh yeah, so tell us about that.
Well, this is kind of weird, isn't it? This is I mean, I'm not sure what to make of it. It's not been officially released, and I know certain people within Microsoft said shouldn't really use it, but it's cropped up as a download, and it's kind of like I mean, I've not got it running locally. I'm not sure I want to really. But basically, it's kind of like a new desktop version of the Outlook app. So I'm guessing that they're going to try and bring all the various Outlooks and mail apps together into one place, and looks to me like it's kind of a jumped up PWA app. to a certain extent. And I mean, it looks fine. Seems to work relatively well. I'm not sure it's going to make people who are used to using Outlook happy though, because it does look as though it's quite limited. But maybe that's the point. I don't know. And what do you guys make of it?
Well, I think Gary, I'll come back to it, but I would say from my point of view, because I use Outlook all the time, it's going to be a bit of a culture shock, I think, to go to that. But over time, they have been evolving the Office 365 version of Outlook to look like that anyway. I haven't tried it myself, but I've seen the leaked shots, and it's looking that you can see them on that way. And the web version of Outlook is pretty good. It looks like a wrapper around that. There will be I mean, I at work I quite often say to just use Outlook Web Access. It's good enough now to not warrant messing about with Outlook's issues. So use that, but there's still people aren't that keen on it. But certainly it's way better than the built-in Windows Mail client, which is very long in the tooth now and does need updating. Yes, I mean to be honest, not using mail at all, posting things via letterbox is better than using the inbuilt mail client. It's as you say, it's not really changed much for a very, very long time. So and Outlook.com has been so much better for so long. It's kind of been a question as to when this is going to happen, but I'm not sure if it would necessarily be able to replace things like the current full fat desktop version of Outlook, though. That does so much stuff that, although that is quite a bloated tool. So I don't know, maybe there is scope to kind of snip some stuff away. I don't know what unique functions people would shout about. I guess maybe forms, perhaps. I'm not quite sure what would keep a person on the old Outlook, the old desktop Outlook, rather than use the web-based one. Yeah, and I tell you what, I've moving away from using Outlook and using Teams for like all the calendar stuff that I always did in Outlook. I do it in Teams now. I prefer it in Teams. So I think perhaps some of the functionality is going that way as well. I see. Do you also rub your arms with a cheese grater as well? Because I mean that's kind of what using Teams is like sometimes. Well, or I'm being harsher. And then squeeze lemon into it too as well. That's a key thing as well. And then you got the real Teams experience. Yes, in case you're wondering, may have had some problems getting Teams working this evening. Yeah, and it's funny though, Gary, isn't it, that they're promoting a lot of the developer technologies, WinUI stuff and things like that. Yeah, on the other side, a lot of the built-in apps are becoming PWAs. Yes, yeah. I mean, I haven't looked at this one, so steer clear of it because I don't know it's really where it's actually come from and whether it's valid or whatever. But yeah, I mean, certainly that seems to be the rumor that there's a lot of PWAs out there, which kind of makes sense. I mean, I think there's a lot of web developers out there who can easily generate the PWAs, but it does tend to make a limited native experience. I'd much rather see proper native apps, to be honest. Yeah. I mean, I wonder if perhaps we're seeing things like, the super tanker in terms of Microsoft's own dev, in that, they were very heavily on PWAs a few years back, and more recently we've seen more native support come back again. But of course, I imagine the projects to convert to PWAs were well underway at that point. So I can't imagine them turning on a dime, so to speak. Yeah, so this will be ready for Windows 10X when launch. Yeah, but Gary's absolutely right. I mean, PWAs are great, but I honestly, it's hard. It's difficult to beat a native experience for an app and what you can do in the app. Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, it is, and in fact, they did a post today, I think, as we record on Tuesday evening, about the updated apps in Windows 11. And one of the changes is Windows Recorder, a voice recorder, is now Sound Recorder. Oh yeah.
So does it mean we can't record our voice with it anymore?
The old version was great because it only recorded your voice and didn't record any of the background noise. Now it records everything. I can see they've kind of modernized it, and it's actually a native app by the looks of it, unlike something like Clipchamp or something like that. But it looks quite good actually. To be honest, I never use it. because I always use Camtasia for doing any recording video or audio on Windows, but having a built-in tools there, it's a shame it doesn't just do record. It's just not sound and video recording. It could just capture some of the screens as well at the same time. That would seem to be. I tend to use Teams if I want to do something like that.
I mean, I guess there's no real problem in there, but maybe there are tools that can do it. There are external tools already that can do it. Plus, maybe they'd hit issues with copyright and things if they allowed you to record chunks of your screen.
Yeah, maybe. I noticed
or an inbox app.
If you've got Camtasia, if you open, say, the Sky Go app, it says you've got a screen capture software enabled. We're disabling. So there is a procedure, a system in place for that. But yeah, I know what you mean. It makes it a bit not less obvious if Microsoft are not doing it with the inbox apps. But in the blog post, they also highlight things like the ones we've already seen, like clock and calculator and the media player as well, which it's okay, but it's not the greatest. It's not groove music. But it's good that they're highlighting these tools. The Photos app, I noticed, has had a bit of a change over the last few times I've seen it on the dev channel. The toolbar is kind of built into the window frame now. That where you've got the application name, all the icon, the toolbar icons are in there. So that's another Windows UI paradigm that, in fact, I can even share you. So this is if you notice this one here, I'm just sharing on the thing. You've got the icons are across the top, the tool icons across the title bar now, which is not something you see in other applications. So this is, again, another new Windows paradigm.
Or, as they would say, we are continuing to evolve the toolbar. So there you go, they're evolving things the whole time, or making things even less consistent than they are now.
Yeah.
I had high hopes with Fluent that they begin to make the icons consistent, the control panel's getting more consistent. It's like no, we're now going to do something else over here for this app, so it'll be different again. Which, Microsoft, please be consistent.
Yeah, and I remember there was a stage when a style change in Windows meant that people like Garry were redesigning their apps or have been asked to redesign out to make them look like the native apps. But I don't know if that's the case anymore. Is it, Garry?
I've not heard anything recently.
You don't get, but you. I guess you don't get get a lot of tasks to do native Windows apps anymore either, do you?
Very little. No, very little native Windows apps. Doing a lot of web-based .NET stuff these days, and still some mobile stuff as well. But I mean, the front end stuff is really interesting now, because most of the work we tend to do is back end these days, generating APIs and things that other people can plug into.
Yeah,
it seems to be the way of the world at the moment.
Yeah, so if you look at all these, I'm just scrolling through these UIs. So there's sound recorder, the new sound recorder. That's one UI. There's graph, which is similar but not the same.
Yeah. There's
clock, which is completely different. Music, slightly different. And then photos, completely different again. So there isn't. I remember thinking back. I think it was like with Windows 95. The style changed, and then we got square buttons, and then we got buttons that popped up when you move your mouse over them and things like that. So each time that was happened, all the developers then would sort of incorporate that style into their own applications. But that, I don't think that's definitely not a thing anymore.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think as developers have moved on to the web, the kind of the interface design guidelines that we used to follow maybe 25 years ago just don't really apply anymore.
Yeah, which is a shame, but that's how things evolve. I don't even know whether, and that was the thing with, if you get back to Windows Phone and Metro and all that, that was where they tried to get that sort of forced into, wasn't it? So all the applications have the same look and feel, so that if you especially on Windows Phone, but that kind of didn't pan out either.
No, and that's what. But you never know. Perhaps Microsoft might open source it one day. I mean, they've had a frenzy of open source stuff recently. Thinking 3D Movie Maker is open source.
Yeah, now this is the 95 version, was it? Windows 95 version?
I can't remember if it came with 95. I mean, I think it may have. I mean, I think it was released around 95. I think coding wise, it's probably predates 1995. But yes, this is the I think it was a Twitter user simply said, "Hey Microsoft, how about open sourcing this thing?" And it's a tool that lets you set up. It's a bit like stop motion in some ways, in you set actors and scenes and have them do stuff, and it's great for kids to sort of create mini movies and things. It's not to be confused with Movie Maker, which sadly has not reappeared yet, which makes me sad because we've got Clipchamp instead. But yeah, so 3D Movie Maker. So I think was it Twitter user at that Foon, I think his name is, I think, and he appealed for it to be open source, and Scott Hanselman listened, and it went through the Microsoft machinations, and out came the source code in GitHub for 3D Movie Maker, which is I think it's so iffy that you can't build it with current tools, because I know when they did File Manager, I was able to build that, but you need to actually go back in time to get versions of Visual Studio and C and C++ to actually build the thing. But what I found interesting, and again, this is a bit of a retro nerd time, was they had to get permission to, I think it was open source, the Brenda engine, which came from Argonaut Software,
right?
Which is a real blast of the past.
Wow. Yeah.
and so you go back a long time now for that, and that was it was really interesting. It's kind of a side to Microsoft that I like to see when they open source these things like File Manager, like 3D Movie Maker. It's kind of the good side of Microsoft. And I mean, who knows? Could Media Center be next?
Yeah, that's kind of a core part of Windows 32-bit. So I don't think that's going to be, that is going to be on the cards for some time.
Oh, Groove maybe, Zune.
Yeah, I don't. Windows Home Server.
That's kind of, isn't that technically Windows Server 2003?
Yeah, it is.
No chance then.
No, definitely not. I don't think we're going to see any of these applications, going out there. But yeah, that was quite fun with that Movie Maker. But yeah, it's interesting that how time has changed for these, for the emphasis has changed quite a bit.
Yeah, always moves on.
Yeah. So that was it for the build. There wasn't a huge amount in there, I don't think. I think they're just stabilizing things, showing off the new applications, and I have got a video of some of the changes, but as they keep pulling things out, I'm gonna have to revise that and do a final version.
It's almost like it's almost like the end of a game show. Here's what you could have had.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I probably that tablet taskbar thing is the one thing that I'm definitely going to miss. Hopefully that when dev and beta split, then we should get that back. But as Microsoft say, you're not guaranteed features in these rings. You are just testing things they're thinking of rolling out.
Absolutely right, and they're very very clear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you can't get upset about it.
But we will anyway.
Yes, but it gives us something to complain about. Yeah. Did you see that last week we talked about the Windows 11 on the original Surface Duo? The guy on Twitter has posted more video of it, and he's looking quite good actually. It seems to be working really well.
He's got touchscreen. He's got touch code, hasn't he?
Yeah. Unfortunately, mine still is a command line only Surface Duo, but I'm sure I haven't given up. But it seems like I've managed to damage the partitions enough that I can't repair the partitions. There's not enough of the operating system left to do the recovery. I think that's probably what I've done, but never mind. We'll see. That's why I won't be doing it on my Surface Duo 2. They just brought an update out for the Surface Duo this evening as well. It's they've improved the in-app camera experience for dual screen modes for applications with dynamic orientation requirements. So I think that's just detecting the rotations for the, and I suspect that will have the same update will also for the Surface Duo 2 when that ships, because they seem to be pretty much tied together, those the operating systems on the Duo and the Duo 2 now, which they weren't for some time, but now it looks like they are. I haven't ordered my NFC tags yet. That's I was going to do that last week, but I didn't get a chance. But something I was going to look at is a while ago I reviewed some tiles. Those Bluetooth type tags, things for finding your things, and with going on holiday soon, I thought I might have another look at them. But I was surprised at how much that market's changed now. I don't know if you've ever seen these. These are the little Bluetooth tags. I don't think I've got any here. The batteries ran out on the ones that I've got, but you could have a look. So say if you had it on your key ring and you lost your keys, you could have a look where that tag was last time your phone pinged it. Quite handy, if you've left your wallet in the restaurant, say, and you've got a tag in your wallet, you go home and you could say, oh well, the last time we were in the vicinity, it was in the restaurant. So it's quite a good system, especially if you're losing things all the time, or you lose your keys all the time. Some people are prone to that. So I used them for a while, and then my batteries ran out, and I didn't replace them because we were stuck at home, wasn't going anywhere. But now I think, I'll have a look at that. But I noticed that for the tile now, you have to pay a monthly subscription to be able to see the last place your device was, or the connection was. So if that example, as I said, you went to the restaurant, when you get home, all you'll be able to see is that you've lost your device without paying a monthly subscription. You can't see where it was the last time it pinged. So kind of defeats the object, really. So I'm going to look at some alternatives. There's a few out there, and I know that Apple have I don't know what they call it. They call tags, the Apple devices. Yeah. So obviously I won't look at the Apple ones, but I want something like that. But I was surprised to see that these subscription routes have gone down. Like what we talked about the other week with these services, they can quite easily disappear and be pulled, and you end up with useless devices. So I don't think I really want to go down that route of paying a monthly subscription. So I'm going to have a look. There are some alternative ones on there, so I'll definitely have a look at those. I know there's some privacy issues around them, isn't there? Especially with Apple, have had that with the tags.
Yeah, people attaching tags to cars or other people's sort of clothing and things, and being able to follow them.
Yeah, so stalking type thing. So yeah, I don't want it for stalking. I just don't want to lose my wallet when I'm hot. But it appears that you've got to pay it. So I guess you could probably roll your own type device and get some Bluetooth thing, but you need the service. But I don't know. I'm sure you could probably do something with a low cost. And so is there some Arduino Pi kind of system you could do for that? I'm sure there must be something. But yeah. So I've been having a look at that. So I'm gonna try and find some of these. But everything, whenever you look to get anything now, it's always X amount per month type service, and especially as things are going up. But I'm starting to have a look at my services that I'm paying monthly subscriptions for, and sort of thinking, do I really need them? I think Netflix has gone up, Sky's gone up.
Well, I mean, I guess Sky you're stuck with because you like the F1. So
yes, exactly, yeah.
So you can't avoid that. I think certainly it's interesting to see how streaming TV's gone, because I can remember many years ago the conversation with Ed Bott where we were sort of saying home server's great and this is great. Well, in the future it will all be streaming, and he turned out to be correct. But of course, what we're seeing now is you're having to have so many different streaming subscriptions to get the content you want that you're ending up paying a lot more than you used to do. And I think maybe there's going to be a bit of a realization. I mean, it's kind of been, it's a bit like when Star Trek moved to Paramount Plus, for example. I like watching Star Trek, but I thought, you know what, I just can't afford another. I don't want to do another subscription, and it's cured me of watching it. So, which may not be what they intended. And I do wonder how many other people are going to say, you know what, I just like yourself. I'm going to look at the fact I've got Amazon. Well, I use the Prime for the shipping as well as everything else. But do I need Netflix? Maybe not, because most of the content on Netflix that you might have watched, perhaps that's gone elsewhere. You can buy it on Prime, or you can watch it on Disney Plus or whatever. So it's, yeah, I mean, we saw the Netflix announcement where they expect to lose subscribers. You can see, well, if they are losing their content in the way they are, it's being moved to other platforms, then you can see people are going to go where the content is. Absolutely. Or decide to rationalize their subscriptions.
Yeah, I think that yeah, there are quite a few shows which I watch, but you know, if they went to another one that was another £10 a month, I think, no, I'm not that, you know, as much as it may be my favorite show at the moment or whatever, it's not worth £10 a month for that show to make me jump at service.
Exactly, and it's getting to the point where some shows will say, you have to go onto streaming platform X to watch it now, or if you can wait a few months, you'll be able to buy the box set on platform Y, and you think, well, that box set's going to cost me about the same as 1 month on streaming channel X. So perhaps I'll rethink things, and maybe I'll go back to buying box sets again, because I don't want to spend the £50-60 a month in total it's going to cost to have all the streaming services, and I'll stand not having the immediate watching, because let's face it, with the changing working practices, you don't have the water cooler moment anymore where you stand and discuss shows with your co-workers because you're all at home.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, is there also? I mean, do you think there's also danger that the price rises in streaming services and the way content is now spread out could mean there might also be a surge in piracy?
That's usually what happens when you can't obtain content legally, or you can't afford to obtain content legally. Yeah, it's. I mean, I think the paramount thing, and also the fact that some of this content is being time lagged between regions again, which was always a big problem.
Yeah.
That always leads to that, doesn't it? But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think but there does seem to be, again, we've had a sort of diversification across multiple channels, but there's again now seeming to be a coalescence against, because you've got people like Disney buying everybody else up, and so that's, I mean, there may well just be one channel before long, which would be Disney, but then again, what price would they charge for that if they had all the content? So so you got all this happening again, but we've seen this. I mean, it's like cable TV all over again, isn't it? It's,
I mean, if only there was a centre to keep all your media in the home.
Absolutely, that's what we need.
And a server that you would have in your residence. What would that be called?
Well, not home server, of course, but
and a way of getting around that streaming issue for music, you could have some kind of like disc-shaped object that had everything in, all the music in one place, and all the playlist could be into one thing, and it played it in order, and then you turned it over and you played the other bit of it as well. That's a good idea.
And you mean you'd keep that even if the place,
the money.
Even if the place you bought it from didn't supply it anymore, you'd still get to keep it.
Yeah, exactly.
What kind of world would that be? What kind of world would that be?
You keep it. You can keep it over there with the Spectrums, and then just put it on, and they can't delist it or cancel it because it's there. And amazing. Yeah.
Progress.
Yeah, it is funny, isn't it? That although I was talking to my niece, who is 13, 14, there's a bit of a thing of her age going to charity shops and buying CDs.
And doing what with them? I mean, do they know what to do with them? I mean, do they even have devices to play them on?
What's interesting is that they've moved from vinyl to CDs.
Yeah.
Wow, that doesn't take long.
which is really interesting, because 3 or 4 years ago it was all vinyl in that age group, and now it's all CDs.
They're on CDs, yeah. So I don't know what they're going to go to onto next super audio CDs. Or maybe they'll be going for HD DVDs or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, I thought it was really weird because. Yeah, I had all CDs. I got rid of all my CDs. I just have streaming or vinyl, and there she is going to charity shops buying Fleetwood Mac Rumours on CD. Not interested in the vinyl. It's got with the CD, and then with a retro CD player to go with it as well. So, yes, that's that's teenagers for you, though, isn't it? So
kids today, kids today.
Yeah, but fancy that. Yeah, I go around looking for records. But the one good thing, I suppose, is that. Actually, you can't get vinyls, cheap anymore. There was a time where I could go to a charity shop and pick up, a good album, a good 80s, 70s album on vinyl for a couple of quid. But now that everyone knows the value, and if you go and try it, buy a Pink Floyd album, you know, you're talking 20, 30 quid or something. Whereas I'm guessing on CDs, these are still not that classed as valuable. So that if you're a teenager with not much pocket money, then you could get yourself a copy of Fleetwood Mac Rumours for a quid or something like that, rather than 20 quid on vinyl. So this is how these things circulate around, isn't it? With especially with something like music, like musical instruments had the same thing, and they are synthesizers. Analog synthesizers were really expensive, and then they went cheap because, you know, digital ones replaced them, and then everybody wants to go back to analog. So all the analog ones are expensive again, and the digital ones went cheap, and now they're expensive again because everybody wants so it's just things come around in phases. But yeah, with streaming services, you're not in control of those phases, are you? You're just at the will of some company, and like Gary said, you know, if Disney decides to buy up all the rights to everything, then that's where you'll have to be. And Richard, you mentioned even the Formula One. Aside from a few markets like the UK and I'm not sure about the US. I know in Europe, like Germany and things, where Sky have got the rights, F1 have their own app and streaming service, and if you're in sort of Central America or South America, you can pay the £10 a month or whatever it is, and you get all the F1 stuff through the app and the streaming service, and you don't get it over your satellite TV or cable or terrestrial. So I think if all the sports are doing that as well, this gets even more complicated and even more crowded. Oh, for the simpler days when you had 4 channels.
4 channels. I remember 2 channels.
I don't remember 2 channels, I have to admit. I 3 channels I remember Channel 4 launching, but I can't remember older than that. Of course, Gary worked on one of the computers of the launches of was it ITV, Gary, or BBC One?
Wasn't quite that early.
Gary was doing the punch tape for Logie Baird.
I think some of my code was actually used on Channel 4 launch, but then.
Oh yeah, channel. We had a bit of it. We talked about that. I think it was the last week we talked about Micromen. It was, wasn't it? Yeah. If you I think it's on the BBC archives. You can watch some of the making the most of the micro and the computer program. I think it was called, wasn't it, with Ian Davis, Chris Searle, was it?
Yeah, all tapping away on their BBC Model Bs.
Yeah, fantastic.
With those weird screens that only ever existed in schools with BBCs. I mean, I never saw those metal box screens anywhere else except in schools. I mean, I presume that they must have been sold somewhere else, but I never saw those metal boxed sort of CRTs in schools with BBCs.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So anyway, you can watch those. So they're actually quite interesting. Some of the making the most of the micro. Actually, I remember watching. I don't think I ever watched the computer program. Maybe watched it at school, but making the most of micro. It was a Friday night. I seem to remember with Fred Harris. Ledley Judd.
Well, what's funny is we talk about range anxiety now, but the old Sinclair C5 electric car that had proper range anxiety. We say, it can only do 50, 60 miles on a charge, 100 miles on a charge. That 7 miles if you were lucky.
Although you can replace the batteries now with more modern batteries and get quite long range on one of them.
Of course, yeah. Of course, I see there's plenty of videos of that on YouTube. Actually, people extending the battery. I've seen a few of those. Not quite the charging infrastructure needed for those as the ones that you've got the interview with tonight, Gary.
Indeed. Actually, while we're talking about range and stuff, we did to discuss the cost of running an EV a couple of weeks back, and I just wanted to highlight a journey that Andy Till did. He's Mr. EV on YouTube. He basically drove from Canterbury to Rome, and want to make a guess at the cost of driving from Canterbury to Rome. Canterbury to Rome.
That's quite a trek, isn't it? That
it's 2,283 miles.
Well, if you're going if I was going to take my car fuel, I'd be looking at 400 miles on a tank, 50 quid, something like that. So yeah, if you multiply that, that's quite a bit. So what was the EV?
So the total worked out, and this is with quite expensive public charging because he was having to use the chargers he could use. Return was £160.
That's actually quite a bit more than I was expecting. Oh, I thought it'd be less than that. That's
but that works out at 7p a mile, which is you could. I mean, you struggle to do 7p a mile in any other vehicle.
Yeah.
But that's with probably the most expensive public charging you could use. But obviously that was rapid for him, so his journey was not particularly long compared to anybody else's. I mean, it probably added. I mean, he took the stops when you want to take stops every couple of 2 to 3 hours of things, and then didn't actually charge that expensively. I didn't charge that long on other two stops.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that compares that favourably with, say, a hybrid. Thinking about this, I'm just bagging some figures into spreadsheet. I love a spreadsheet. I love a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
I mean, and bearing in mind a hybrid, you just stop, refill, and carry on. I mean, the hybrid's still more expensive. It's still. I'm surprised that's not cheaper. Actually, I would have thought it'd be cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, but it would have been cheaper 6 months earlier because obviously
yes, I guess
electricity has gone through the roof.
And of course, there's a sheer wear and tear of doing 2,500 miles in a ordinary car, whereas electric car you'll have less wear on the brakes, less wear on the tires and things. So it'll be
but it is. I mean, it's definitely a lot closer now than it would have been previously. I mean, obviously, if any journey you can charge at home on, you're going to be a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. I mean, again, you've got the picture there of the chargers behind you. I thought today when I was, I had to take my child to a school that involved driving a car there, and I pretty much every parent there was now in an EV. And the reason being is like, well, you just drive. You know, your car's always full in the morning. It's having a petrol car that's always full. And I think yes, it's that change in mindset.
As we said before, it's more. You have to think of it more like a mobile phone. You top it up, you charge it when you can and where you can cheaply. And there's always cheap charging to be found, even other than on these very long journeys where you need to do. So you have to offset that. So most of Andrew's daily driving will be done on very cheap charging. I mean, a good example. I drove to the Norwich Grid Surf launch a couple of weeks back. And basically, I could have done that journey and there and back on one charge of my car. A charge I could have, in fact, way less than one charge in my car. A charge I could have done in the 4-hour window. I have 5p a kilowatt, 5p a kilowatt charging. So that whole journey would have cost me around. I'm trying to work out the maths on this. So it's about £2 something for that journey. So it's. You've got that offset that basically if you can charge at home, it's so cheap relatively. I mean, obviously that's all going to change with the cost of power going up. But the other aspect of that is, say you've got something like solar panels on your house, charge from them, got battery. So you effectively could travel for free if you in a sunny day, or you could buy a wind part of wind farm, because there's Ripple Energy who I spoke to at for the charge a couple of weeks back. They just launched their second wind farm. People investing in that and then getting money back and paying their electricity bills from that. So there's all sorts of options to try and cut these costs down. But yeah, I mean, what you have to remember is that the public charging in Europe is particularly expensive. Because their charge rates their domestic charge rates are very expensive. We've been very used to very cheap electricity for a very long time. Actually, cheap fuel as well. Our petrol is not as expensive as other places as well. I mean, if you certainly go to some parts of Scandinavia, you're going to pay a lot more money for that as well. So, yeah, it's a trade-off. But it was interesting to see those figures, because that's I mean, obviously that's a very long journey with a lot of charging to give it a good idea. And a big car as well. That was in an Ion 5, which is a sizable vehicle. Do it on a smaller vehicle, you'd probably get a much better trade-off. Actually, I don't. I mean, obviously, the Ion 5 is similar size to some SUVs. I wonder what an SUV hybrid would do.
Yeah. It's interesting comparisons, isn't it? And I think just what I find is so much to try and factor in as well, isn't it? But if you're doing this, if there's no doubt, if you're doing the school run and things like that, then it just makes sense. I think it's only when you do the longer ones you've got to think about it a bit more.
And I just said there's always ways of doing it. There's a company called Bonnet which allows you to prepay for your charging and get it at a much cheaper rate. So there's lots of options there. In fact, I'm not quite sure how Bonnet's business model can actually work at the moment with the energy prices going as high as it is, but it's certainly worthwhile signing up for at the moment. But yeah, there's a lot of things out there. I've got some interviews for Fully Charged Live. I was actually going to mention this last week, but obviously I wasn't here. So I spent a day at Fully Charged Live, which was really interesting. Dan's done a really good interview, the CEO of Fully Charged, about all the stuff there, and it was really interesting to see how that's morphing. We had a lot more things than just electric cars there. There were lots of energy type things there, be it storage batteries or chargers or whatever, and also two of things which I hadn't ever seen before: an electric tractor, which I thought was really good to see.
Right.
Farming is a great place to have electric vehicles because you can charge back on the barn overnight and go out, take it out in the morning, and you don't. And the sort of thing you want to do on a farm is really high torque at low power, low speed, and that's exactly what electric motors are really good at. So that's a very good potential innovation. And the other thing was an electric aircraft, which was one of the first ones I've actually seen, which was fully ready and able to fly. And did a very good range as well, so perfectly good for that sort of a very small, those areas where you need small aircraft to do things. I was thinking sort of like the hops between cities and things like that. It's much better for the environment than the way we're doing it currently. There we go.
Excellent. Well, we'll go to your interview in a sec. So before we do that, Richard, just remind us where we can find you.
You can find me on Twitter, sadly getting very excited about steam trains.
You're trying to out-nerd yourself.
I know. Oh, it was steam trains shot from a drone. It's even more exciting. So.
Oh,
fantastic.
Very, very. Yeah, it was. I had a great time the weekend.
Yeah, brilliant. And Gary, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Gary with 2 R's WMA.
Excellent stuff. So, Gary, introduce, or you can find me at iStixon on Twitter. But if you want to, Gary, introduce your interview we've got coming up.
Yeah, so over now to my interview with Kate from ChargeSafe, all about how charging should get a lot safer. Kate, so thank you so much for joining us. I've been chatting to you on Twitter for a good few years now, I think. And you're very much, should we say, an EV enthusiast? You've been in the world a little while.
I think it's fair to say that, absolutely. I kind of entered the EV world back in 2019 when I attended the All Energy Expo in Glasgow, and I'd gone to scout for wind and solar business, but had actually found that there was this huge undercurrent of electric vehicles going on, and that's kind of where I got hooked, and I wanted to learn more, and I learned about the industry and all the charge point manufacturers and the variety of cars that were available at the time. Started listening to Fully Charged, watching the YouTube videos back then. You know, that was before the podcast even started, and just started following people who had a bit of credibility in the industry. I think one of them was you, Gary. So I have been in this space for a while, but I feel like I've really immersed properly since September 2020, when I received my first EV, which was a company car. I was very privileged to get that, and it was a 64 kilowatt Hyundai Kona, so fantastic car to start with. I was very spoiled for choice, and since then, it's, you know, that experience as a real life EV driver has just really taken things to a whole new level for me.
Brilliant. And as part of that experience, you've had to charge at some chargers around the place, and I think you've had a few experiences that are probably not the best experience.
Right. I mean, even the very first experience, you know, I had to drive from Grimsby back to Reading. That journey in itself was about 300 miles, and the person who had driven the car before me very kindly left it on 69%. So I didn't have the full range to get home on anyway. I had had to actually stop at Watford Gap services, and at the time that was being serviced by the Ecotricity version of the electric highway. It was a 7 kilowatt charge that I arrived to, and I had no idea about the strength of the chargers and how, what it meant to overstay your welcome past 45 minutes. There was this pre-authorization fee. I didn't know if I needed AC or DC and what connector, and it just blew my mind. So I literally sat at the charger and I ugly cried because I didn't know what to do. And actually I jumped straight onto Twitter, and it was the Twitter community that saved me. And I said, guys, I'm stuck at Watford Gap. I don't know what to do. And so many people came onto that post and just gave really valuable advice. They told me which apps to look for to map out my next charger, which services were the most reliable, and they just saved my day. But my goodness, it was a baptism of fire into the world.
I do actually remember. I remember that tweet very well, because that was actually really. I remember actually showing my partner that tweet, because she was really concerned about the EV, again, an EV at the time, and I just said, look, there's a brilliant community out there who will help you.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, and perhaps there's another aspect to that, which maybe there shouldn't need to be that help, but you should have been able to know what was going on from whoever gave you the car in the first place. I mean, we know dealers are not very good at explanations. I mean, I still see it today. I mean, I was at a charger about 3 or 4 days ago, and someone was plugging in Type 2 charger into a CCS port because they had not been told what the rubber button was for.
Absolutely. I mean, I had some great conversations just very recently with some other curious EV attempters, I would say, people who want to make the move to EV. They're still convinced that hybrid is the best stepping stone to that. And I've said to them, absolutely not. I think hybrid really did serve its purpose back when the early adopters were picking up EV for the people who were really, really against going full electric, just to make them feel more comfortable with the whole process. And actually, you're 100% right. It starts with the dealership. The dealership not doing enough to educate its drivers before that car leaves the forecourt. It really does need to be a case of you take the car out for a test drive them to a public charger, show them how to use it, show them how the mapping and navigational services work within the car. Because I know, for instance, in the Kona, it comes up when you've got low charge, and it says, oh, these are the stations that are local to you. So that does help, but it's not 100% reliable. So knowing how to use the navigational system within the car, and knowing which apps to turn to when you're looking for specific information about the charger itself. So 100% education needs to start at the dealership. If you are then passing off a car to an employee as part of your fleet, please do educate them, because otherwise they're going to feel very sad within hours of living in that car.
And I've also discussed with some of the charge point operators whether there should be more education actually at the charge points as well, whether there's some better signage around what charges.
It's the whole process, isn't it? It's do you queue for the charger? Who gets to go first? How long should you stay plugged in? We all know from experience 0 to 80% is all you need. If you're going to have to drive 600, 700 miles, go to another charger a little bit further along, get to that 80%, and then move on, because you don't need to get from the 80 to 100%. It's not necessary. And it takes the same amount of time to get from 80 to 100% as it does from 0 to 80. These are all things that we know as hardened EV drivers, and something that, the Twitter sphere are quite happy to share with each other. But even something as simple as a QR code that you could tap your phone on that opens a general etiquette guide, similar to the highway code. I'd really, really love to see OZEV jump on that and create like a standardized way of how we approach chargers when we're at a service station, as an example. I'm sure it could be rolled out everywhere, but certainly we're seeing the service stations get a lot busier now. So we do just need a gentle nudge to say that's not how to behave at a charger. Don't go and look through someone's window at their state of charge. And actually the newer machines are showing very clearly that state of charge, so hopefully that won't be happening too much longer.
Won't be so much of an issue, although actually some of the more modern cars can actually charge beyond 80% at a fairly reasonable rate. So there is that as well. So I mean, certainly my car can go 85% before you really start plummeting there. So yeah, I mean these things are going to change over time. We've just got to keep up with it, I guess. But charging standards and standards around charges is something you're very passionate about at the moment, and this kind of brings us on to ChargeSafe, which is what I really want to talk about tonight, because I think this is an amazing initiative and so important.
Thank you. Yes, charging standards are questionable for a large majority of the infrastructure that is currently available. So what I will say, and I always say, is that the charging infrastructure will never be as bad as it is today, because it improves every day. So for me, I was traveling up and down the country. I was an events manager, so it meant I would be in Glasgow one day and Birmingham the next. You know, I put on a lot of mileage in that Kona, and in doing so, I had to stop at the service stations, I had to stop in industrial estates, I had to stop at shopping centres, you know, anywhere that was nearby enough where I felt like the charge point provider was reliable. And I got into some shady situations. You know, what I will say is I would probably say 5% of the times that I charged, it was scary, quite terrifying, to the point where I was shaking. The other 95%, I felt safer, but the charge would have taken longer, or the charge point failed to initialize, or it hadn't been serviced. And, you know, operations and maintenance gets really put on the back burner for some certain networks. Now, I won't name them, but I'm pretty sure that you know who I mean. So what I experienced was, you know, a lot of abandoned car parks, poorly lit, with no cameras, absolutely no human activity nearby. And it happened on a couple of occasions. And the last time it happened was enough for me to say, I have had enough. I have been on Twitter. I have tagged these operators in. I have called them out. I've told them that we need change in the industry to make women feel safer. And the reason why I say women feel safer is because I'm biased. I am a woman. But by default, if I make women feel safer, the men should feel safer too. I'm not saying that we're massively vulnerable or terribly weak or anything like that. I'm saying that, you know, it is a known fact that women are more likely to be assaulted out in public. It's a sad thing, but, you know, let's start with the women. Everybody else gets to feel safe as a result of it. And I was discussing this with my partner, and he said, you know, instead of just moaning about it on Twitter, why don't we just do something about it? And I'm quite lucky because he's an incredibly intelligent man. He is a games developer and software developer. So he really loves innovation. You know, he's constantly looking at different ways to produce technology, and he's got the heart of the entrepreneur, as do I. I have previously run my own marketing company. So we kind of put our heads together and just thought, you know, what would incentivize these charge point network operators to make improvements? And then we thought about, you know, Trustpilot, the NCAP rating system, or even the hygiene rating system. It's usually out of 5. Now, if a restaurant had a rating system of 3 or less, you're probably going to give it a swerve.
Yeah.
If it's got 4 or 5, you're going to feel like you can rating system. So we thought, okay, let's rate every public charger in the UK, mental, out of 5 stars based on its safety. And how do we break that down? So we put it out on Twitter because that's where the whole EV community is, it appears. And we said, what would make you feel safer at a charge point? And we got all of that feedback from everyone. It's a really popular post, to the point where Ian Johnston at Osprey actually DM'd me and said, I'm watching this post with particular interest. I'm really interested to see what people have to say. And I was like, that's great, Ian. I've got something coming your way. I'll give you a call when it's ready. And lo and behold, he is one of the first networks that we've been in very serious discussions with, and we're hoping that we can bring them on board in future. So we looked at the environment at the charge point. You know, is it well lit? Are the cameras covering the chargers? When you arrive at in the car park or in the industrial estate, is it signed clearly enough that you wouldn't have to play hide and seek with the charger, and you know exactly where it is? So you've got the environment of the charger, then you've got the facilities of the charger. So is there a loo nearby? Can you get a tea or a coffee or any food? Are there accommodation services nearby, what's the level of human activity, how far away are you from that human activity. So we're looking at environment and facilities. And then we're looking at the charge points themselves. So is the charge point actually working is a pretty big one. You know, I think on certain mapping applications at the moment, you can go on and it might tell you if a charge point is down, that, or you have to read through all of the comments and it could say an issue was reported 2 days ago, but you don't know if that issue has actually been remedied since. So it's still a guessing game. So we want to look at the functionality of the charge point. Is it actually working? We also want to look at how many charge points are there, because actually, you know, the more charge points there are, it does actually make it safer, because there could be other people that are charging at the same time. We look at things like the pre-authorization process. So, you know, is it £1 to pre-authorize your charge, or is it £30 to pre-authorize your charge? And if that charge fails to initialize, what's that refund policy like? Are they going to hold on to your 30 quid for 30 days, which is what one of them does? Or are they going to put that pound back in your account straight away? And that does really make a difference, because if I have £40 left in my bank account and I go to charge and it takes 30 quid and it fails to initialize, I might not have enough money to find another charger and to pre-authorize another fee. So really, really serious things to consider. And, you know, we'd wrapped up the safety element and I was quite happy with the idea, and I drove to COP26 in Glasgow. And I had the great fortune of being sat next to Mr. Graham Cooper of National Grid at a networking lunch. And I said, "Hey, Graham, I've got an idea. I think I'm mad because I love my job and I can't imagine leaving it. But what do you think?" And he said, "I'll tell you what, Kate, accessibility is something that's really important as well. If you can add that in and really make this a rounded package for safety and accessibility, I think you've got something really special here." So we started to take it very seriously. And before we know it, we're on a Zoom call with Edmund King of the AA, and he loved it. He loved the idea, and he still does. He's been endorsing us quite publicly. Yeah, which is amazing. You know, it's really amazing. So we're hoping to work very closely with the AA to deliver a service that should complement the rating service. So yeah, we're doing safety and accessibility ratings. We're not the best people to advise on accessibility. Myself and my partner are both able-bodied. So we hooked up with Motability and we asked them for their guidance, and we've been having a look at the PAS document that's been out for public consultation. It's currently being drafted, and I think that actually closed a couple of days ago. So we're waiting to see, you know, which measures have made it through. But in the meantime, we've actually included almost all of the measures in our official inspections. We've also teamed up with John Brooks, aka Beardy McBeardface, who is our mobility ambassador. So we will be contacting John every time we make any type of accessibility change and just asking, does this mean anything to you? You know, is this something that's important? Is it something that we don't need to include? And how, you know, what's the vibe? So we're very much aware that, you know, we are a team of EV enthusiasts and developers, and we want to make it work, but we need to take advice from the right people. So we are developing the tech and it's almost ready to go. It's just a really exciting time. You know, the feedback from the community has been incredible, and we're just getting ready to release the first batch of scores.
So how are you actually going to handle that rating? Because obviously, if you went to do every single one, it would take you a very long time.
It was, yeah, it's a bit wild. You know, currently I think it's 31,500 charge points on UK roads at almost 20,000 locations now. That number is steadily increasing, and will continue to increase. So how on earth do you keep up with something like that? What we are aiming to do now is we'd previously anticipated going back to every single charge point and doing a quarterly review. However, it's just not going to be physically possible. You know, we are 2 people, and we do actually have 2 other developers, by the way. They're just taking no money. They're not being paid, but they're fantastic. Their names are Andy and Xavier, and they've been incredible. So we have got a very small team. It's a very modest operation at the moment. So we thought, right, if we can just level everything out, we'll start from the bottom of the country and work our way up, because we're based in Chichester. We're very much on the south coast, and let's focus on everything that's 50 kilowatts and above. for, you know, the first chunk of the work, because they are the most likely ones that we're going to stop at en route late at night.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it will be something that's, you know, a lamppost or connected curb, and you're likely to plug it into something of that size if you're staying overnight or you're parked all day. So we're going to start with 50 kilowatts and above, level everything out. Then we're going to build communities around those chargers. So I'm not sure if you're actually a part of it, Gary, but we have been asking people to beta test our public inspection option, which is 10 questions or less. And it's for drivers to really just go to the charger and say, is the lighting working? Are there cameras there? Do you feel safe? What are the facilities like? It's very, very brief. But what we're hoping is that the public will continue to service those chargers. So we've got a lot of real-time data pouring in to let us know if a light bulb goes out or if something's been vandalized overnight. You know, those real-time changes that would be next to impossible for us to keep up with unless we were planted right next to the charger 24/7. So you get the human element of going out to inspect the charger. We've got tape measures for all the accessibility measures because they're very exact and to the point. And then there are some more perceptive type questions and more objective type questions. So really something that needs to be serviced by human beings, but we've really got our work cut out for us. So please do be patient as we try to deliver it. But what we're hoping to do is to become, you know, one of the largest employers of nationwide inspectors, to be out on UK roads driving EVs and inspecting these units full time.
Sounds a fantastic idea. So one thing which came up when I showed this to my partner was we're parents of very small children. Our twins are under 2, and accessibility isn't always about disability. We have all sorts of issues actually getting the children in and out of cars at some of these charges, and that was something we wondered if you were going to cover that as well.
Yeah, I think by default that's kind of covered off with the bay sizes. So if something is considered accessible for people with, you know, mobility issues, then it's going to be accessible for someone with a pushchair. If we can break that down any further on our personal website, so on our actual ChargeSafe website, I'm sure that's something we can do. That's a great suggestion, in fact, because we have just been looking at safety and accessibility. So we could put like a little pushchair symbol to show that it's, you know, buggy friendly. Perhaps.
Well, buggy friendly is one thing. The other thing which comes up a lot is we talk about having toilet facilities, but is there baby changing facilities available? Are the bins, which is a big thing, available, and those sort of things. And it's not just obviously baby things; it's toddlers and beyond that's equally applies to. And the biggest issue I think, and this is obviously an accessibility issue anyway, is the bollards people put around chargers.
Yes, they love to protect their tech, don't they?
Of course, some are expensive, and I kind of get it because there have been quite a few incidents where people have reversed into them and the like. But there are other ways of protecting that investment. And obviously, I mean, the big thing I think at the moment, and I was talking to Dora from Osprey about this for the charge, is the fact we are getting some British standards in place now, which will make it more easy to incentivize the landowners to actually do some of this accessibility work, because that's definitely been the big challenge up to now.
Oh my goodness, honestly, the landowners have a lot to answer for, and I know this from you know, having very early conversations with Ian, so again Osprey, where he explained to me in a really lovely way, because, you know, I'm going to him and I'm saying we're gonna be rating all of the charge point network operators, and he said, well, it's not as simple as that. What I didn't actually realize is the landlords have put a huge amount of pressure onto the charge point networks by being so uncooperative from day one. You know, we know it was a land grab exercise. We know there was a lot of competition out there in order to get the retail units with certain landlords. So if you just have a look at the likes of Lidl versus Morrison's, for example, you know, if Lidl turned around and said, well, we're not going to give you 3 spaces so you can make them into 2 accessible bays, and the grid connection only goes this far, so this is exactly where the charge points need to be located, which could be at the back end of a corner of a car park. We're not going to put in an extra connection for you to put a lamppost over it, for example. And we're not going to do all these things because we know if you don't accept these terms and conditions, you've got a competitor literally a 5-minute phone call away, and we'll seal the deal with them. So a lot of these charge point network operators really kind of just had to say yes to whatever they were offered at the time. And it's only now that we're seeing all these issues come into play, and it's like, who's penalizing the landlords? So what we're going to do is, you know, for the networks that come on board and subscribe to our services, we'll be providing them with the data to show them, you know, this is how your location has scored, this is why it's scored in the way it has, and also this is the location, this is the landlord that you have, so that they then have a bit of clout to go back to their landowners and say, well, actually, you know, we're seeing more traffic go to Tesco's than to Morrison's. Purely an example. I don't know this is factual, by the way, because there's better lighting in one than there is in the other, and one is open 24/7 and the other closes at 8 p.m. So we're really just hoping to support the charge wet network operators as much as we can by delivering that data service. But one thing that I do really want to stipulate is, whilst we're taking on networks as our subscribers for the data, that is purely it, we will not be accepting any partnership or advertising money from those networks, because we need to remain an independent third party to be able to inspect these assets and to be able to look at a location as if it's brandless and go through the marking system. And we will be audited by a separate third party, just to ensure that it's completely unbiased and that the assessor has the competence in order to carry out that assessment.
I have to say, this sounds absolutely brilliant, and something I wish had been there from a bit earlier on, because I think it may have had a bit of a help in stopping some of this issues we've had with the landlords and particularly, as you said, the land grab. I mean, one of the, and we've talked about maintenance already. One of the things I've always been concerned about is how much funding there's been there for installation without the revenue funding to actually maintain these things going forward. I mean, certainly the government grant system hasn't helped there. With councils, for example, the councils getting lots of money to install the chargers and no money at all to maintain them, and they're not going to have the budgets to maintain them.
No, I mean, that's one thing, but just take a look at ChargePlace Scotland. You have private owners of ChargePlace Scotland assets who have been, that, you know, they've given permission for this thing to go in the ground, they've paid for the asset, people are using them to charge, but again, they're in unlit locations, they're poorly maintained, and that's because these small business owners have been sold this asset believing it's going to make them more money, but not understanding, you know, what it takes to maintain these units and make sure that people are going to be safe when they're using them. So we've seen a couple of examples specifically in Scotland where they're extremely remote, as is the nature of Scotland, but it's only a matter of time before their competitors realise that this is a problem and moving across the road, and then suddenly those assets that they've poured their, you know, potentially life savings into become completely worthless because they couldn't get a light over it, or they couldn't make sure that it was serviced and maintained in regular intervals. So yeah, 100% the support provided to anyone who's installed infrastructure from a government level has been really poor.
Yeah, I do think we're starting to see some better things coming on. There's British standards stuff coming in, which I think is really good to see. I mean, doing that. I mean, I think also there's a little bit of onus on the charge point suppliers as well here. I think some of the equipment they've supplied has probably not been fit for purpose in UK conditions.
I could think of a few, but you know, we've got some really exciting players coming in now. I mean, the Chem Power kit that Osprey have just invested in. How good is that?
As shown behind me, this is in the UK install. I actually put this up as probably a good example of what a good location should look like. This is over in Belgium, I believe.
It is great because it's got the side-on chargers. So the side-on chargers are really good because it means you don't have to drive into or reverse into a spot. And if somebody does have accessibility issues, you've got that extended cable. You can see there in the picture behind you, Gary, that the cable length is enough for somebody to park far enough away that they could get potentially a wheelchair in that gap to get the cable out. I think actually, is there a shorter one behind? I'm just trying to see if the handle is a little bit shorter, because these are all things. There's another one as well to the back on the left. Maybe they're the accessible ones. But you do see some real adjustments. Now, I know that you were at the Norwich opening a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Those accessibility bays are inspired because the LED screens are lower, the payment receptacle is lower, the plug is lower. So, if you're rocking up in a seated position, if you're in a wheelchair or a mobility scooter, you can easily access it. It has got those cable arms coming over for the cable management to just be made so much simpler. It takes the weight out of it. It means it's easier to navigate into the plug socket. They've really thought about it. Even between the tire stops, the gap between the tire stops and the charge point itself is wide enough to be able to get a mobility scooter or a wheelchair in between that gap. I was there with my tape measure. I did an inspection at Norwich. I felt incredibly guilty because I was like, here I am on opening day with my tape measure, telling them if they've done a good enough job or not. But they have done a fantastic job. And, again, that score will be released very soon. But it's really exciting to see the likes of GridServe and Osprey really jumping on this and saying, okay, we're hearing you, and we're making these adaptations now. And with the likes of Kempower, coming in and saying, we've developed ChargePoints in a completely different way, and this is how it could look. We don't need a cookie cutter template for everything. We need that diversification. We need innovation. So it's really exciting to see that coming in.
And it was great talking both Osprey and Kempower. They get it. I was talking to some of the Kempower stand, and they were talking about the weight management on the things and how they could even improve that further, because they know that they're still a bit heavy for some disabled users to be able to use and difficult to align, and what they can actually do to make that better. One of the big problems obviously with CCS charging, and particularly high power charging, is the fact you do need fairly thick cables which are heavy, and it's actually difficult to mitigate for that, and how you do that. And obviously this location behind me again actually has attendance service potentially as well, available as well for anybody who can't move the cables, and that's a big thing as well. Most of our charging locations, as you well know, have no attendance available to them, and
not when it's in a bush, Gary. No.
Yeah. So, but we are seeing some operators actually doing that as well. MFG Group, one of my dark horses, I think, in the charging world, virtually all their locations have attended service, and they do have a disability service, although I wouldn't say necessarily all their charges are particularly accessible, but they have that as an option. So that's another element, I guess, to it, that you've got that service culture of being available to them, and that will come in more, I think, as we get more charges in locations with vendors. Like the GridServe Norwich, obviously they're in place there. They can look after it. They know if there's anybody having problems, they'll look after them. It's just, I think we're still going to suffer, I think, from the invested architecture, the stuff which has been there for 5 years now. Some of the locations which are in some of these retail places where the landlords have not been forthcoming with charges, and I'm not sure how we solve that. Have you got any ideas? I guess the
legislation will solve that.
Yeah. And I guess your rating will help with as well. If some of these places start getting low ratings and see a drop off in customers, then they'll start to rethink how they do some of these spaces, I guess.
So that is kind of the unanticipated outcome of this service, is it does create more of a competitive market. If you've got a low ChargeSafe rating, you're going to want to know why, and as a result, when we pass these ratings over to the likes of Electric Juice as an example, and they pop it up on their mapping application, and you've got to decide whether you're going to turn left or right, and one's got a ChargeSafe rating of 4.7 and the other one's got one of 2.3. If safety or accessibility is your priority, that's where you're going to go. And then everybody who suddenly scores 3 or less are going to be thinking, how can we improve this? They start to apply pressure onto the landlords because they can clearly demonstrate that they're losing customers as a result of it. And then the landlords could apply pressure to local authority and government level. So it has a really nice, from the ground up effect. And I just feel like those companies who are the independents, GridServe, Osprey, Instavolt, ones that have come in to create this infrastructure because it was needed and it's the right thing to do, those are the guys who are being innovative and they're reacting to their customers, and they are going to be the ones, you know, that I predict will enjoy a very long business life. It's the others who have been very slow on the uptake. And I will say, you know, Shell and BP have got some reputational damage that they really need to fix, certainly in terms of the operations and maintenance of their units, to gain their customers' trust again. So only with that will they have improved ChargeSafe scores, and hopefully all we want to do, Gary, is make it safe and accessible for everyone. And that's the whole point. Is when myself and my partner James sat down and we talked about this, the thing that was the most important to us was making sure that if a woman has to stop at a charger at 3 a.m, she feels safe. If someone in a wheelchair needs to charge, they're not going to be discriminated against because they're in a wheelchair, no matter which charge point they go to. And it was the idea that came before any of the business stuff fell into it. So it was kind of like, this is what we want to do. How can we make this a successful business to ensure we can deliver that service? So it's all come from a good place.
A very good place. I have to say, I'm really enthusiastic about this. I wish you the world of luck in getting it off the ground, and we will talk to you more about this, I'm sure, in the future. For now, how if anybody wants to find out about this, do they find out about ChargeSafe?
So the best place to go for more information is to our website, which is www.chargesafe.uk. There's no co in there. .uk. We couldn't get the .co.uk. Or following us on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn. We had to get our minds around the joys of TikTok. But you know, they can follow me directly, Kate_Tyrell, that's TYRRELL on Twitter. I tend to retweet everything that comes from the ChargeSafe account anyway. So yeah, or even just reaching out to us directly. So we've got an email which is hello@chargesafe.uk if they want any more information.
Brilliant. Well, we'll try and put most of that in the show notes as well, so that people can link through and find things quickly, because I think this is a brilliant idea and something I'll definitely be supporting. So thanks for your time again, Kate, and we will definitely get you on again a little bit further down the line to see how things are going.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Gary.